Today I am joined for the third time, probably, no, yes, the only guest who's been on three times now, Kevin Dolan, with his actual name. He has been on the show twice before as Extra Dead JCB or Bennett's Phylactery, as you might know him on Twitter. A legendary poster, now a legendary businessman and nonprofit founder, and the organizer of the upcoming Natalism conference, which will hit the stage in December 2023. Welcome, Kevin.
Great to be here.
I'm glad you're back because you are now tackling many problems. Like on one hand, you're the founder of Exit Group, which is I have it here, a fraternal organization dedicated to ending our reliance on corporate employment, so that we can't be threatened by a politicized HR department or an employer mandate. This is something we've discussed on the show before, and I want to point people towards the second appearance of yours on the show. But today you have added something to your portfolio, and it is the Natalism conference. And maybe we can just, yeah, you can just give me a little bit of an overview of what you're trying to achieve with the conference.
Yeah, so I mean, it sort of was born out of an exploration of what we were really about in Exit Group, because we were sort of looking around and like realizing that none of us was necessarily like we're not like libertarian absolutists necessarily. We're not like there shouldn't be any rules and it was more about like we had a specific project, we had specific things that we wanted to accomplish that we needed to be politically and financially independent to pursue. And basically that was we want to have grandkids. We want our children to be able to grow up healthy and with the resources they need and with the connectivity they need, and to find other people who are trying to have kids and preserve our culture and the things that we care about. And that's sort of a like a de minimis goal historically. That's sort of like what has to happen if you care about anything that your culture represents or anything that you do. It has to iterate. It has to continue into the future. And the only other way to do that is to parasitize other people's kids. And so it's about basically we're having these conversations about like what are we really about, and we were like that's what it is. We want to all have grandkids, and Tucker had that documentary The End of Men, and it was like William Wheelwright and Tiger Lily and Ben Braddock and just a bunch of people who were like friends of mine on Twitter. And I thought, there's probably an opportunity for a deeper conversation on this subject. And if Tucker's talking about it, and Balaji's talking about it, and Elon Musk is talking about it, then maybe this is something we could get a light shined on. And the biggest obstacle was always going to be, it really doesn't strike me as a political issue, but we're sort of in the process of like looking for friends on every side of this, like people who actually agree with us that like it's a problem that all these populations are collapsing and like there won't be a Korea in 100 years. Like if that strikes you as a problem, then we want to hear from you. And so like we've got folks involved. Like you had Malcolm and Simone on your show recently, and like I have all kinds of disagreements about like the approach and like sort of the philosophy underlying like because they're very much like let's rationally like assemble the social machinery, like let's build a religion, build a culture from first principles. And I don't think that can be done. But I like that they care about this problem. And so I'm like, come on down. Like let's talk about it. And so yeah, the challenge right now basically is just to get to get as many people from as many different perspectives on this issue as possible, because like a lot of these conferences, they can be kind of a confab, kind of a like, well, we all know what the answer is, so we're just going to preach at each other and then we're going to put it on YouTube. And this is not that. This is we really don't know what the answer is. We don't know how this thing is fixed, and like I mean, some of us are like squared away personally, but how do those personal solutions generalize? How do you turn those into um, something that another person could sort of walk in your shoes? Um, so yeah, that's the NATO conference, and it's definitely from the same uh, desire, from the same place as what we're doing at Exit. It's just a little more narrowly focused.
There's definitely kind of this kind of minimum viable, almost religious framework, because there is something metaphysical in the idea of wanting to perpetuate yourself, even if it's just a bare bones metaphysics of not wanting to die out. But the fact that this is like a unique thing, the fact that you need a conference and you need to remind the people of Korea that maybe it'd be good to, exist in 100 years or so
Yeah,
is a striking thing. And yeah, I think it's a very good place to find friends where you can, because it's shocking how few of us there are, in a way, that still kind of harbor this stuff. I
it's
hope
sort
there
of
are
viewed as
more.
a weird. It's sort of viewed as a weird religion, and to me, it's like, how could you like, that seems like such a basic psychological concept, like, oh yeah, life is better than non-existence. and like and the people who are close to me, and the thing that I grew up around is good, and I don't want it to die. Like, that doesn't strike me as like a fringe perspective. That strikes me as like that should be the default human perspective, but it like somehow isn't. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, it feels to me like it's tied to the fact that in like the last 100 years at least, we've moved from any sort of perspective and concept of a collective existence of anything outside of the individual. And if you only focus on the individual, if that's your only level of abstraction with regards to how you treat society, then the future does not exist. The past only existed as far as it affects the individual. It's all based on, okay, how does this impact my freedom, my choice? And I mean, if you were to be super rationalistic, and if you were to pull out your napkin and make a pros and cons calculations of how much utility you derive from having children, it probably is negative utility if you think about things that are quantifiable, like money and sleep and all sorts of things that people tend to value, or they think they value, at least in the short term, because they really can't model what it would be like to have children. So I think that's, at least in my perspective, and how I see people relating to this. It just feels like an unnecessary burden for the individual, and because there's no other acceptable framework to look at life outside of the individual, there is no one actually accounting for this.
Yeah.
There's no one keeping a tally of, are we still doing this, guys? So yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, and so the conversation, and I mean, I find myself slipping into this, like, I because I want to get people's attention who are not already bought in. I do find myself talking about like the economic consequences, like you're going to be in a rat hole nursing home, and no one will be able to afford to feed you. Like that's the, the in terms of the hedonic calculus, it's a well it's a game theoretic thing. Like, as long as everybody else is having kids, the hedonic calculus around you individually having kids maybe doesn't add up. But if nobody has any kids, then everybody dies in a rat hole nursing home and no one's able to feed them. Like, that's uh so like, and I don't, I like it seems to me that the kind of person who needs to be sold that way, I'm sort of like, come on, like you should understand this at a higher level than that. But like, that's the minimum. Like, if you can't get that, then I can't help you at all. Like, it's a huge problem. And people, they get, uh, well, they get really concerned about politics. And I think a lot of these constructs, the party system, the immigration system, like, a lot of these things are just not going to matter if nobody has any kids. Um, so I see this as like the bedrock. What one of the things that means is, it's a great place to like start a conversation. Like, well, we can't agree on like our like religious values. We can't agree on, what we think America is or what it means to be free. We have all these abstract disagreements. Can we agree that we should still exist? Can we agree that like something should continue of this thing that we've built? And I see that as the smallest degree of agreement that you could possibly have, and that's where you have to start. And so, day one of the conference is going to be, your speakers and panels and reception and the typical things that you would associate with a conference. But that's going to be focused on like, let's draw the contours of the problem. Like, let's say, what are we actually looking at? What's going to happen? Could anything be done about it? Should we care about it? And that's all public facing. That's going to be streamed. We're going to be, that's going to be available to lots of people. But fact is, one of the reasons that we don't talk about this issue, and Malcolm and Simone brought this up, like, they go to Japan I can't remember if they were talking about the Japanese or the Koreans, but it was
Koreans,
like
yeah.
the Koreans, yeah. They were like, oh yeah, we all know that this is coming, but we just don't talk about it. We just all agreed that we're just not going to bake this into any of our calculus. And not to go too far afield, but when I worked in defense, I was at a strategy group, and I would hear, I would be waiting for somebody to say the N word, meaning nuclear, and nobody. It was completely off limits. Nobody ever talked about nuclear weapons, and we'd be talking about bombarding ships in the Taiwan Strait, and really F-35s going in under the radar, and and there's just like, we'll just assume no nukes, because if we assume nukes, then all bets are off and civilization's destroyed. And so we can't like do our strategic planning job, we're going to pretend that's not an issue. And I think natalism is the same thing. It's the same. It's another N word that they won't talk about. And because it blows up it blows up all the other stuff they're trying to do, and they have no clue how to address it. So day one, let's say this is something you need to address, like, bottom line. Day two, we're going to say, closed door. We've got, there's actually a vendor that will like give you a pouch to put your phone in, like a Faraday cage for your phone. And so you'll be carrying your phone around, but it'll be unavailable to you. And we're going to be sitting in groups of 8 to 10. And we've got a guy who does Stanford D School, like, product design workshops for a living. And he's great. And he's one of my partners. And he's going to be putting together these conversations. Some of them are going to be like, if you want to actually like come out of this conference with a prototype, something to start, and you're looking for like partners, we're going to have workshops like that. And we're also going to have broader, looser, like, kind of general discussion groups for those who are not, trying to go that hard. But the goal is to like provide an opportunity where the broadest set of people with the most possible perspectives can be like maximally adult about this question, and really, really think through what it would take to fix it. And that can be, and when I say fix it, that could mean somebody has like, hey, here's how we're going to reverse this problem altogether. I'm skeptical that that's possible at this point, but I'm open to it. Um, Other possible solutions are, how do we get us and our families squared away? What kind of investments could we make? Like if you're in Japan and Korea and nobody else is baking into uh, their financial estimates this problem, well, there's an opportunity to make a bag, right? Like there's a huge arbitrage opportunity, and that's so that's the kind of thing that we're going to be exploring. Can we fix it, or can we insulate ourselves against it, or can we actually uh, invest for it, hedge against it, so that our kids will be better squared away. So that's sort of the structure of the conference.
Mhm. Yeah, so it will include things that are, as top line as possible, as broad as possible, and yeah, I mean, it does seem to me like that's kind of the structure of a lot of projects, kind of that are blooming on the right. Some are conflictual, like there are people who are only dealing with red Caesar type ideas, and on the other end there are people who are only dealing with homesteading, and they hate
Mhm.
each other, obviously, because you you shouldn't have both, because it's absurd to have both, and
Right.
one is stupid, and the other isn't. But yeah, I think this is productive, because yeah, I mean, you know there are levers to be pulled at the individual level. I mean, this is kind of what I'm trying to do, and I know people around me are trying to do as much as possible. But yeah, the large scale has its own problems, and I wonder what technology, how technology plays a part in this. I mean, is there going to be something specific about technology, or is it kind of still very, very broad? Because I know Simone and Malcolm are very into fertility tech, and
Mhm.
all of this. This is kind of their angle on this. And is there kind of a carve out for this at the conference, or if this flower blooms, you'll let it bloom, but it's not specifically addressed?
I mean, we're definitely looking at the biomedical side of this, and I would my personal preference would be. Um, I talked a couple of weeks ago about bees, and like how if your bee colony was starting to die, you wouldn't like try to reverse engineer like mechanical bees. You try to keep the organic system, figure out what's going wrong with the organic system and what's threatening that organic system, rather than try to replace it. And I think my preference on the biomedical side is like, let's look at, are there cultural reasons for this, and or uh, like neuroendocrine reasons for this. Like, I mean, everybody knows that we're eating plastic and having hormone disruption. And could you fix most of that with changes in lifestyle and culture, and potentially regulation? On the side of like, but like if somebody has a novel technological solution that's kind of accelerationist, and you know uh they're welcome, they're invited. Like I'm not I think all of these ideas need to have a hearing. You know what I mean? Not necessarily that they need to be, that's why day two is like, we're not streaming that stuff. We're not publicizing one solution. We're not saying this is what we have to do. It's like, let's all get together, smart people, and let's have it out. And I mean, I want everybody to have a good time, but it's by nature, it's gonna be adversarial on some level, because we're gonna have disagreements on sort of the telos of all this, and also how to get it done. Um, and I think some of those arguments need to happen. And if they happen in a personal, private, you're not getting quote tweeted on Twitter. It's just like the
Mhm.
temperature goes way down, and it's just way easier to have a good conversation about it. So yeah,
Yeah.
the answer is yes. They're invited and they're welcome, and we'll see what happens.
So day two is when you're going to be talking about openly about the breeding camps that you're obviously planning, and the re-chattelization of women. I hear. So, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So
why
like,
else would you be hiding the footage?
yeah, I mean, that's probably the biggest hurdle, uh, the, the biggest like tightrope to walk is if you make it a room where one set of people is maximally comfortable, you're going to make a lot of people really uncomfortable, and they're not going to show. And my perspective on that is that this you can dream about like just sort of reimposing by fiat, you know, some older version of the relationship between men and women, which by the way I don't think is real. I don't think men and women ever interacted under those conditions. I look at the stories of, you know, Zeus and Hera and Hephaestus and Aphrodite and various spouses of like the Norse gods and all these stories, and it's like there's this constant back and forth and this constant negotiation, and people are you have to and this is maybe a I don't know how off the rails I'm getting here, but like you can't go to bed every night next to a subdued enemy, or you shouldn't want to. Like, it's not a good way to live. It's not a happy way to live. It's not productive. Everything works out so much better if you've got buy-in and you've got people who are really, really rowing in the same direction. And so I think both in terms of like my personal sense of what's right and also what works, um, and also our present situation condition, like you just don't have the muscle right now to like make women do what you want, even if you could, even if it was, you know, like, you know what I'm saying. And
Yeah, you
so
don't have the grip strength, that's for sure.
right, right. So there has to be women at the table, and they have to be telling you what they want and what they're looking for, and whatever you figure out, they have to be bought in. And I do think I do think that one of now to be completely transparent about that, like, um, I have kind of a patriarchal family. Like like my relationship to my wife is kind of, you know, I'm kind of taking the lead of things. And uh I think in general that arrangement works pretty good. I think that's probably why that arrangement has existed historically. I don't think it was as dramatic and as coercive as either feminists or like sort of the rad trad guys think it was ever. It's always been a negotiation, but I think leadership, um, that's always been part of the equation. So uh, I guess what I would say is like there's a difference between leadership and tyranny. There's a difference between, like, there are hierarchies that are not resentful, that are not contemptuous, that are not adversarial. You can have a hierarchy without all that. Um,
Yeah.
and so anyway, yeah, that's your question was about breeding camps, and
No, I
I
think
hope
it's
I
no.
answered
I
it.
think no, I think you have, and I think this is, you know, the right answer. It's pretty much my answer as well, and it is interesting to me, you know, kind of how I'm I would say I'm kind of in a more traditional relationship myself, but you know, we both work, we both kind of have the same, so the pressures are, you know, I'm not just like a housewife. I have my own stuff, unfortunately, sometimes not because I love doing the podcast, but I have other business things I need to attend to, and it takes up some of my time, and you know, money flows similarly. And it is interesting because, you know, we're not egalitarian. I mean, there's definitely a like a polarity in my relationship, but if we go, for example, on a camping trip, my husband's really like proficient in survival things. Like, he knows how to make fire out of whatever, find shelter, eat foods, different things in the forest. it immediately defaults to the fact that he is now telling me exactly what to do, and I'm wouldn't even think about, questioning his authority on that. And that kind of reflects to me the fact that, the relationship in the past was based on a certain competence in the face of adversity, that it just wasn't. I, as a woman, could not have that competence because it involved, brawn and courage, facing wild animals and all sorts of things that, the fact that, my husband's better at being exposed to the elements and sorting out a lot of things like that. Yeah, it just wasn't negotiable. And it's really interesting to me how easily I fall into that mode where it's like, we're like semi-egalitarian in the day to day because that's kind of what we need to be. And then the
Mhm.
second I know that he's ultra competent at whatever, it is absolutely natural to me to, to shut up and do whatever he tells me to do. And yeah, I think it's just something that's, like you said, it's just not the state of nature now. It's just not
Yeah.
how things play out in the day to day.
And I mean, I don't like, there's also this angle of like, um, if my wife like had to bring everything to me for like approval and like sign off, it'd be exhausting. And like there's so many elements of what needs to get done that she cares about that I just don't care about. and and so it's like that then there's that level where I'm sort of taking the back seat because I'm like, yeah, sure. Let's do it that like uh how are we going to prepare for like so for us if it's we're having an outing like uh she's got the snacks and she's got the activities and she's got the itinerary and all that stuff and and I have to outsource all that. Even in my like professional life, when that kind of stuff needs to be done, I outsource that too. And yeah, so I mean, I think you have to be complimentary and you have to be aligned
Yeah,
on
I think
values and doing different things in terms of the execution.
Yeah, I think you highlight something really interesting here that I think gets a lot of people into trouble in a lot of modern relationships. It's a lot of times the person who takes leadership on a certain domain is the person who cares more, and
Mhm.
women tend to care more about more domains that tie to the household. So a lot of men tend to, it seems to me, take a
When you
backseat
get in a
on.
fight because you're checked out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, that's real. And
yeah, and
I think
then
you have to bring it back to like what are we trying to accomplish here? Like
yeah.
because there are situations where like it does matter and should matter and I should care but I don't and then I got to get on board. And then there are some times where it kind of doesn't matter and shouldn't matter and so I can say maybe we should stop caring about this. And the 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 farther back you have to go to get to like yes we agree on sort of the fundamental like teleological question of the sandwiches or the decor the easier it is to resolve that dispute but like yeah so you should be with someone who I guess yeah I guess I'm getting prescriptive here you should be with someone who uh wants the same big picture the same like final destination, same consummation, what the relationship's for, what you're actually building. Um, because then the little narrow questions become easier to address. And you still have to hash them out. You still have fights, but figure them out.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, yeah, just the very important part is just like splitting up domains of competency and also interest. I mean,
Hmm.
I know exactly what my husband deals with, and I don't invade that except for, urgent problems when he says, "Okay, you have to deal with this now," because yeah, I can't. But yeah, I think that's been really useful, and I think a lot of people don't do this, and they both try to do the same thing, and they step on each other's toes, and it's a big disaster. So I guess
Well,
that's
and you kind of
that's
meet
probably where.
people like if your default way of meeting people is in your undergraduate or graduate program or at work, well, you're sort of selecting for a population that's sort of trying to do the same things as you, and that's probably and it's not anybody's fault. Like that's where you are. That's how you're going to meet people. But in terms of if you were taking the God's eye view and trying to like engineer a situation where people could meet maximally sort of complementary and valuable partners, that probably isn't the way you do it. And so, one of the guys coming is Indian Bronson. He's running his dating app, and he's sort of thinking about the game theory of how does an app benefit when someone actually like seals the deal and stops being a customer. Because all these apps, like they're just like any other app, they're driven by engagement. They make money off engagement, and if somebody finds love on Tinder, that's a failure for the app from a revenue perspective. And so it's not surprising that Tinder has become very much oriented around this sort of endless hamster wheel of anonymous sex. Like they just want you to be walking around with these bleeding wounds and sort of
It's a very plastic way of putting it.
Huh?
Yes. I mean, bleeding wounds in your heart. I think you
yes,
meant,
psychological, spiritual. Yes,
yes. Okay,
that's what I meant by that.
Yeah, I mean it's
well, you went way rougher than I was prepared to go there.
It was just a very vivid image, and I was like, "Whoa!" I mean, people really take this Tinder stuff seriously.
See, I was thinking about a man. I had a man in my mind, and his heart. I was thinking about a man and his poor broken heart. Shame on you, Alex.
Yeah. Oh man.
But anyway, yeah. So Bronson's trying to figure out. Bronson's trying to figure out how an app can be designed around like closure, and he's going to be there. He's going to be talking about his thing, and hopefully, sort of inputting on some other projects. Because like there are sort of structural problems that could possibly have solutions. I think there's a tendency on this issue to sort of make it all about repentance, like we're not getting married because we're fornicators and we're adulterers and we're sinners, and we need to just man up and stop playing video games and start dating and start getting married. Or if you're a woman, you need to stop being a hoe on Tinder or whatever. And it's like, I'm not going to say there's like no role for like sort of moralizing, I guess, but I think like maybe that works on the individual level. Like maybe there's a person who, if they heard the right sermon, might have an awakening and turn their life around. But in the aggregate, I think you're talking about incentives. You're talking about in the aggregate, people don't really make choices; they respond to incentives. And the more that you can build the incentives to encourage healthy and happy behavior, the better. And it's sort of like I think there's sort of a libertarian streak that would argue that's like propaganda, or it's like interfering with people's freedom. But it's what you're doing is you're solving like a prisoner's dilemma game for them. Like everybody knows that this defect equilibrium is bad for everybody, but no individual person has the ability to break out of it. And so if you build something, I guess top down, I guess is what I'm saying, a structure, a framework in which those kinds of defections can be guarded against, well, then everybody can cooperate and trust each other. Ultimately, I think, and this goes back to like the relationship between men and women and going to bed next to a subdued enemy. So much of what we're up against right now is women should probably have kids in their 20s. Like from a biological, from a sociological, it would be healthy if women were having kids in their 20s. But that's uh, they have their sort of maximum sort of sociosexual power at that time. They have all these career opportunities that need to be seized at that time, or else they go away. It's just really hard to jump into the workforce when you're like 35. Um, Not impossible, but harder. And so you're sort of asking women to trade in what is, from like the hedonic perspective, like some of the best years of their lives, the best opportunities to like go. And I don't mean to say this in like a condescending way, but like do the eat, pray, love thing, and travel and have experiences and all this stuff that life is supposed to be about. Like that's the time to do that. And you're telling them instead to take on a lot of really hard work and a lot of the rewards of having kids. I mean, we've got little kids, and I love my little kids, but they're a lot of work, and a lot of the things that I'm excited about for them are in the future, and a lot of the things that I'm sort of hoping to sort of I guess get personally out of having had those kids. I'm sort of looking ahead to those things, and on top of that, you're telling these women you need to do this with a man. And are men to be trusted? Like, can a man provide for you under those conditions and then stay with you after that window is closed and help you sort of deal with the consequences and the aftermath of that decision? Um, what a challenge! Like to to trust somebody on that level and make that kind of sacrifice. And I don't see this as like there's like nothing to be gained for being like it's men's fault or it's women's fault. This is like a really, really challenging coordination problem that we're all in the soup. And um and so if I could come away with like the biggest possible, the most ambitious possible solution to this issue, if we could talk about it at the conference, it would be how do you get men and women trusting each other again? Um,
Yeah.
and I have no clue. But I hope somebody smart
Yeah.
has some ideas.
That is a tough one. I've been thinking about this because it feels like that tenuous equilibrium is breaking down even more with kind of what's going on now with like the most unhinged stuff coming from the manosphere and the most unhinged stuff kind of building in like this rad femme backlash. Like it's really nuts. Like there are people who spend their days on the internet just watching clips of the opposite sex making, fools out of themselves or exhibiting the most deranged behavior. And then they're just kind of generalizing that, that there are literally areas of the internet where women constantly see baby rapists, men who rape babies to death, and this is kind of these are the anecdotes that travel in those spaces and all sorts of, weird sexual deviants and murderers and things like that. And this is not the true crime space. This is, the rad film space. Much these things are seen in a bad light. So yeah, it's really deranging. And obviously, the other end of this is I don't know clips from the whatever podcast or things like that, where
Oh man, whatever
women with
podcast.
yeah, I mean,
Boy,
obviously, it's just it's not done much for the relationship between the sexes, I feel.
no.
Yeah,
I
and
hate
it's
that
just
freaking
it's
podcast. It's just like why do I want like yeah, they're dumb. Why do I want to hear from them? Like why do you need to like prove this point to yourself? Go find the dumbest people imaginable and ask them dumb questions and have them give you dumb answers and then be like, "Ha, they're dumb." Like it's
yeah,
and people
it's
just
like
eat that
me,
shit up. It's crazy. It's
yeah,
crazy.
going to, discuss whatever Kierkegaard with, like, the local prostitutes on, like, the, center street here. It's,
Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
it's not gonna pan out, it's not gonna be edifying. Yeah, it is a weird thing, but it drives clicks, and I feel
Oh,
like we're just
totally.
kind of in a yeah, it's a weird mature stage of these spaces, they've kind of I don't know, they're festering, both of them,
Yeah.
and,
And
yeah, I think some
the other angle on that, like it's not just that like women are seeing men behaving badly and men are seeing women behaving badly. It's they're also like internalizing and aping a lot of what they're seeing, the sort of stupid behavior on like sort of deepening their own neuroses and their own problems. And it's sort of like uh, I have had the experience of when a girl has like really like shitty friends who are like just sort of whispering in her ear, encouraging her to distrust and interpret everything you do negatively. And it's like that, but it's like a megaphone, and it's just like constantly, and it's like thousands of people doing it all the time to everybody. It's man, it like global electromagnetic pulse, maybe just wipe it all out, clean the slate. Like I have no idea how you fix that.
Yeah, this is one aspect of intersexual competition that people have not confronted, and it's very glaring on the female side, I think, but I think men have it as well. Like where, you have these lists of, like what do you need in a partner, a
Oh
woman that
yeah.
doesn't have any, doesn't have any male friends, doesn't this, has no college education, has, whatever her teeth are intact, or I don't know, it's just like, the 17-point plan of what you need to be doing to select for the best mate. And obviously women as well. I mean, if you look at these Reddit mommy groups and stuff like that, one woman complains about her husband. I don't know. Hasn't taken out the trash in 2 months, and she's really pissed off about it. And like 10 women underneath say instant divorce or something like that.
Right.
You know? Yeah, because and and this obviously has different versions, but it's always like the most extreme thing. And yes, this happens in real life as well.
Yeah.
The girlfriend, especially the single one that you have and kind of your thing, kind of, if you're complaining about your husband or your boyfriend or something, she will agree with you, at least very
Respect yourself,
very
girl.
vociferously.
Respect yourself. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's a way of signaling, like it's kind of like a princess and the pea situation. It's a way of signaling your own sexual value to be uh, like there's this dating coach. It's like know your worth, and she's talking about like all the things they're just a total deal breaker for her, and she would never advocate anybody to. And it's just truly deranged, and yeah, and you're right that it's both sides doing it, and I think you have to change the incentives, and I'm actually finding like a lot of these I don't know, some people might think it's dorky, but like a lot of these sort of post rationalist people uh getting very interested in arranged marriage and matchmaking. um I I wish them luck. Like I think that's a cool idea, and I think having people sort of vet your choices in a disinterested way, where they're actually sort of incentivized to find happiness for you instead of sort of score points in the group chat, or yeah, basically I think almost everybody, you should almost never take advice from somebody who doesn't have what you want. Like
Mhm.
uh the, even guys who like, oh, the guy who's been divorced, and it's really messy divorce, and so he wants to warn you about the dangers of marrying the wrong woman. It's like, what percentage of those guys really understand why that thing happened to them? That's a and I'm not saying like they're dumb or they're bad guys, but like that's a level of introspection and like self-knowledge and like insight about the way the world works that's rare. And being a divorced guy is not rare. Like there's lots of those guys, and just like I think if you want to listen to some guy like that tell you about like how you should be doing things, he'd better be a really special divorced guy with like a really like magic eye on what happened and what went wrong, which is, I mean, it's way harder when you're close to it. So yeah, anyway, that's part of the problem. It's just who people are listening to.
Yeah, and I like that you kind of brought up the post rationalists. I think they're often cringe in the sense that they are maybe too introspective. They kind of fetishize this, taking apart your life with tweezers and looking at every possible aspect of it. But they do land in quite wholesome places sometimes. They also land in polycules sometimes, which unfortunately is a byproduct of the space. But a lot of them end up in like really like wonderful kind of very measured type of marriages with people that they've really given a lot of thought about marrying, and they're having children and all this type of stuff. And yeah, I know quite a few who've been, I mean, quite a few, I know two who've been kind of arranged married by kind of friends and even groups of people doing this for a living. So yeah, I think it's yeah, more power to them. I've kind of become post cringe now that the manosphere is like exploding in its own pus. And it's we kind of have to look around and see who is actually living a decent life. And sometimes it is the post rationalist, and I'm happy for them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's sort of the mentality of those guys, like the rationalists. It's very much like uh, the rationalist thing was very much like, what if there's just like $100 lying on the sidewalk, and we're ignoring it because we're just sort of acculturated to think that like those kinds of opportunities aren't out there. Like, what if they're just simple weird change, like one weird trick that you could change that would make your life a lot better. And so they're looking for all kinds of one weird tricks. And like yeah, some of those are like, what if I never felt jealous about, sex? And like that probably is not working out in most cases. But some of this introspection is sort of like, let's take a fresh look at things. Um some of it leads in pretty valuable directions. And I kind of think that like the post rationalists they're sort of the people who they kind of had the same journey with those guys that I did in a certain way. Um, I think I'd be like too Mormon to be invited to the sort of post rationalist club, but I definitely went through that space. Said like, wow, these are some really smart people. These are some really neat ideas, and then sort of concluded that like, well, these guys are not really thinking about second and third order effects. These guys are not really thinking about big picture, and it's sort of, you can see the failure modes. Um, and then you sort of default to like, you come back around to like, well, maybe some of these walls are here for a reason. Some of these structures exist because they do useful things that we don't always. And even like on the meta level, the ability to the ability to step back and say, even though I can't tell you why this thing is important, it looms large enough that it's probably important and and maybe shouldn't be questioned, like sexual jealousy. Like maybe you can't specifically like draw the causality of how that's going to ruin your life, but might ruin your life. Like anyway, yeah, they're an interesting crowd, I guess is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a post rationalism or post rationality is kind of a, I think, an attempt to compensate for the failures of rationalism without actually leaving the group,
Yeah.
without divorcing them. But yeah, it's I don't know if it's working. But yeah, I think I'm going to move on to the question of the show, and I want to see if you have a updated answer to this. Do you have a subversive thinker that you think is underrated, or people might want to check out? Maybe someone related to your new quest in natalism.
Subversive thinker. Um, Man, I should have come prepared. I've been on this show twice. Um,
No worries.
I would
Doesn't
say,
have to be too.
honestly, this Ernst Junger, this Forest Passage book, I read it. I read it once, didn't get it, and then kind of figured out what he was laying down in the last like 10th of the book. And then I went back and read it again. It's not long. It's a skinny book. It's 100 pages. You can read it in a couple of days. And he basically goes up against cybernetics and egregores and technique, all these things that sort of it seems like our side of the internet has been like sort of discovering over the last 5 or 10 years. And he basically just had them all nailed in like 1950. So he doesn't necessarily have like all the answers or all the solutions, but just the fact that he was able to see these problems so early is really like it's uncanny to read. So yeah, The Forest Passage by Ernst Junger is a great book.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. I mean, I've been reading the Technological Society by Jacques Ellul, and he's kind of the someone who's been obsessed with technique. The whole book is about technique and its insidious powers in society, and the fact that people are kind of blinded by the idea of technology and the machine, but it's actually it's kind of the iterative move to improve the way you do anything, and the machine
Mhm.
is just kind of its most shiny outgrowth. But the more insidious things that kind of spread us apart and distance ourselves from our humanity are little things, just procedures the managerialism and everything that we kind of complain about is essentially kind of the victory of procedure over just the way things were functioning organically.
Human
Yeah,
judgment, yeah.
it's really interesting, and I think there's going to be much more about this. People are starting to think about this much more deeply because it's just so ubiquitous now. It really is inescapable, and yeah, it's kind of oppressive at this point. So yeah, I can imagine there's going to be a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Junger's take is basically that the drive for efficiency is rooted in the fear of death. That we're all chasing down this hyper efficiency because it's sort of clinging for every hour, for every moment, sort of hyper optimizing um, to sort of get every scrap because you're afraid to die. And a society um, that has no telos, no like sense of what life is for beyond death, or does life continue after death, will inevitably pursue this kind of hyper efficiency. And so his solution, like so, the Forest Passage is a passage through death. It's a confrontation with mortality, and he tells the story of Dionysus and the pirates. When the pirates capture Dionysus, and he sort of turns the boat into like grapevines climb all over the boat, and like a tiger comes out of makes a jungle in the boat, and a tiger comes out and eats the captain, and the sailors all turn into dolphins. And um, he sort of likens that to the sort of divine frenzy, the sort of insanity that he views as the solution to this problem. Like you kind of have to. He also tells a story of William Tell, who's a guy who sort of famously um, stopped caring what happened to him, stopped caring whether he lived or died, because the sort of magistrate, corrupt official, made him shoot an apple off of his son's head with a crossbow. Um, and yeah, I think there's something to that. That in order to escape the sort of machine world, the machine thinking like a machine, you have to abandon this sort of hedonic efficiency, and you have to kind of stop caring about what's good for you. And going back to the natalism question, it's like, yeah, love is a leap, and it's, I mean, that sounds so cliche, but it's like it really is this divine madness. And when you are asking people to have children at the kind of scale that maintains a society, you're asking for like divine madness at scale. which is a crazy. I mean, it's a wild undertaking. So anyway, that's who it is. That's my subversive thinker.
No, that's really beautiful, and I think that's that, hits something really profound. And yeah, I mean, this is, and in a way kind of a Baptist type point as well. I mean, you could also see kind of this, internet vitalism as being a little bit efficiency oriented, especially with regards to body fat percentages and things like that. But I think there's a spark of that in BAP as well, and I think that's why he is so popular and elicits so much um, loyalty from people. And yeah, I think that's a good thing.
Like
Not that
everybody
I,
else, I am trying to figure out what to do with BAP. Because he's got so many things just nailed down tight. He's got so much figured out that was just like lightning to me. It was crazy to read that book. And there are two books I've ever read in my life that felt like an altered state of consciousness. And one was Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy, and one was Bronze Age Mindset. And I'm sort of like, I'm a Christian, and I like believe in all these things that are sort of contrary to in at least in surface ways from like what he's advocating. But at the same time, I'm like, man, there's so much to what he's saying, and I am that's been my project for like the last 4 years. Is just sort of like trying to synthesize it, trying to decode it. I know Zero HP Lovecraft came up with like a Baptist Christian synthesis. You know, I don't know if
he's a
if that problem.
strange man to have come up with it, though. He's definitely more of a Baptist than a Christian. Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah. That's the thing is that the Christians I know who the sort of the public facing, like publicly Christian, like as part of their brand, people I know who are confronting BAP, it's very much adversarial, and it's very, we're very, very upset, and I disavow, and that it seems there's too much truth in it for me to do that, or to even really respect that. Like, I don't think that's the right approach uh, to something as insightful as that. So anyway, yeah, that's yeah,
Yeah, no, I
interesting.
think I think everyone who's honest about, and thinking deeply about this stuff cannot just dismiss BAP out of hand. I think that'd be a mistake. I think, the incentives that these platforms set are really tricky as well, because what is asked of BAP is not only to be the producer of Bronze Age Mindset. He is kind of this daily prophet who has to produce and take sides on everything, and have this long-term coherence in his view and things like that. I just think it's really tough to maintain that, persona. I mean, he is literally a persona. There's obviously a guy behind that, but he's produced this larger than life character, and I think it's
Mhm.
just, yeah. I mean, the strictures of that and the requirements of that, are inevitably going to lead to incoherence at one point. It's just, yeah, you can't just be doing that. I mean, he's good, but he's not that good. No one's that good. So I think that's a big problem for anyone doing anything like this, and I don't think anyone is doing anything exactly like Bab. So yeah, I mean, it's what a feat, at least.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
I think you got to maintain a healthy imperious disdain for your audience, and he's he's succeeded at that. And I try to do it too, because people want to argue with you, and I just I think if you sort of let yourself become part of that process, it'll make you literally crazy, and not in the cool Dionysian crazy way.
Yeah. Well, on that note, and with the the requisite hat tip to BAP and everything he's done with the space, I want to thank you again for coming on the show. First guest, third time, and I also want to point people to the Natalism conference and all of your other work. Is there any place that people should go to?
Yeah, natalism.org, and then for the group, it's exitgroup.us. So yeah, check us out.
Okay, perfect. I'll put the links in the show notes. And yeah, thank you again.
Thanks, Alex.